أعزائي المشاهدين، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. نرحب بكم في حلقة جديدة من برنامج الحد الأدنى. في هذه الحلقة نستضيف أحد أعلام الدبلوماسية النرويجية في نقلة نوعية في حواراتنا التي امتدت شرقا وغربا، والآن نحن نقف على عتبة السياسة الخارجية النرويجية وكذلك تقاطعاتها مع السودان، وكذلك دور النرويج في صنع السلام في السودان إضافة للعلاقات الثنائية. يشرفنا أن نستضيف داخل الاستديو سعادة السفير فيدروف تورنسكين، وهو دبلوماسي وسفير مخضرم في وزارة الخارجية، انضم لها أكثر من 40 عاما، ظل في الخدمة الدبلوماسية. عمل سفيرا في السودان من العام 2005 حتى 2008، وكان عضوا فاعلا في قضية المفاوضات بين الحركة الشعبية لتحرير السودان وحكومة السودان من قبل. لديه الكثير جدا من مخزون المعلومات يشاركه لنا في هذه الحلقة. يعمل الآن هو مسؤول السياسات وكذلك مسؤول فض النزاعات في وزارة الخارجية النرويجية. في زيارة إلى السودان اهتبلنا فرصة وجوده معنا لندير معه هذا الحوار حول هذه القضايا. من اللطائف أن السفير فيدروف يسميه أصدقاء السودانيين فريد، يعني اختصارا لهذا اللقب، وهو من ألقاب التحبيب التي تقرب بين أصدقائه في السودان وبين هذا السفير المخضرم. Ambassador Fedorov, thank you very much for accepting our invitation to be in our show today.
Thank you, Ambassador. It's an honor for me to have this opportunity to be able to explain some of our positions, the Norwegian positions on different issues, in particular on Sudan. And it's also a privilege to me to meet, as I have done this week, with so many old friends from the time of the negotiations in Naivasha for the peace between South and North. I also was involved in the peace operation in the Nuba Mountains from 2002 to 2005. And I just feel very happy when I'm in Sudan. You know, the relationship between Sudan and Norway goes back till the 60s. And we have many...
Since that time?
Yes, we actually had the first university cooperation program between the University of Khartoum
and
Bergen, starting in the 60s.
Wow.
And many of the people on our side that have been involved and still are involved in cooperation between Sudan and Norway are of that group, came through the university cooperation.
We have a lot of scholars,
yes,
from Sudan, just graduated from Bergen University and have a joint program. One of the real academic assets and cultural exchange program that is, survive for many years and really bear fruits right now for young scholars in our university.
I think it is an example of how important it is to have good contextual knowledge of a country where you're working. And we have this privilege of having Sudanese researchers and Norwegian researchers developing a common knowledge base that we can use when we are working on the politics.
Absolutely. I mean, and that part of the soft power that your country is investing.
Yes.
Actually, in Africa and different parts of the world. But Mr. Ambassador, Ferris would like to discuss the issue of peace building in Sudan. Your country, Norway, has invested a real political capital in the peacemaking in Sudan for a long time. Can you describe to us and for the interest of the viewership, what was the motivation? What were the motivation of your foreign policy engaged in peacemaking in Sudan before?
I think the main issue that came up during the 90s was a genuine desire to try to make an end to the war that was between the South and the SPLM and the government.
Mhm.
And we had contacts on both sides. And we saw that it was extremely important to work with both parties on an equal basis and use our knowledge and our contacts to try to assist the parties to find a common ground for making peace. We saw that this could make stability in a country which was the largest in Africa and which has many, or it has an impact also on neighboring countries, whether there is a peace or not in Sudan. And this is still valid for our involvement.
Can I ask you, Mr. Ambassador, a quite transparent question? Was it because of the Christian religious right group and organization in your country influencing the politics, that because South Sudan was mainly Christian, African Christian people, that some of your civil society organization from Christian religious background would like your government to get involved and put an end to this?
I would say no.
Okay.
Of course, the role of certain NGOs and religious NGOs was important in terms of that the Norwegian Church Aid had been active in South Sudan for many years. But it was a much broader basis for our involvement.
Mm-hmm.
The Norwegian Labour Party and the Norwegian People's Aid at that time did not have a religious fundament for our involvement. It had more an ideological element of seeing that there was a civil war that was based upon issues that we saw actually could be resolved if there was an approach between the two parties. We had been actually following Sudan also since the 1972 agreement.
Yes.
And we knew that not alone,
So
but
that's Addis Ababa agreement.
Addis Ababa agreement. We had contact with Abel Aliye, we had contact with your people through the research program.
Joseph Lago.
Joseph Lago, yes. And so I think it had a much broader basis than a religious only. And we knew that in the north, I mean, it's not a black and white issue.
Correct.
So we saw that there had to be certain changes in the policy of SPLM in order to achieve peace, and also in the government's approach. So our role, we saw, was to kind of bring the parties together.
Honestly, the perspective in Sudan might be wrong. That because the Christian Aid organization in Norway was the main vehicle for former leader John Garang reaching out to Europe and present him to different forums, even in the UN and other forums. But this might be quite different. My question, you were involved in since 2002 during the cessation of hostilities and ceasefire in Nuba Mountain.
Yes.
You are in charge of the humanitarian delivery at that time. Could you see from your perspective and your active role at that time that there was a trust-building process bearing fruits during that time, during when you are trying to having an open access for humanitarian delivery to the Nuba Mountain at that time?
I think this goes back actually to the US opening up for relations with Khartoum back when Senator Danforth
where they
came in
as a special envoy.
2001. And he had some requests from the US government and some conditions that they felt would needed to be fulfilled in order to open up for a normalized relationship between US and the government in Khartoum.
Yes.
Which had nothing to do actually, or very little to do with the North-South
Yes,
conflict
correct.
as such. And one of them was the peace, the attempt to create peace for a while, temporary peace agreement between the SPLM North and the government in the Nuba Mountains.
It was like a test and confidence
It
building.
was a test and a very successful one. Actually, when the Americans asked Norway and some other partner countries to assist in that operation, Norway decided, yes, not only we would like to participate, but we would like to lead that operation. So we appointed, or with the agreement of UK, Netherlands, Germany and Switzerland, the agreement was negotiated in Switzerland in 2001.
Between Mutrif Siddiq and Abdulaziz Al-Hilo.
Exactly. Both of them are friends of mine.
This is good news. Mr. Ambassador, our historical record showed that former Minister Hilda Johnson
Yes.
played a very positive role, or an active role, I could say, in the peace process at that time. And she published her famous book, Waging Peace in Sudan. From your perspective, the personal side, do you think her involvement was positive in peacemaking in Sudan at that time?
I think it was very positive. It was not her alone. Actually, you had changes in government during this period. She is from the Christian Democratic Party. She was a minister at the time. And then we had the Labour government, but they continued with the same policy with other envoys. But her personal involvement was important because actually from the beginning our involvement was basically through kind of the contacts with the South and with the SPLM.
Yes.
But gradually Hilda Johnson also met with politicians in the north.
Yes.
And also with Amr Moussa in the Arab League and other Muslims, and she got a broader understanding of the conflict and could understand also the North in that conflict, which was essential at that time.
That's perfectly correct, because when you read her book, Waging Peace in Sudan, which is translated in Arabic, you could see some feeling of pro-SPLM at that time, more engaged with the SPLM in the south, yes, and less engagement with Sudan at that time. So this is why we are asking this question.
No, but you are correct. It was from the beginning a much more kind of south-biased and SPLM-biased contact and kind of background for our involvement, but quite soon, and I was also involved in that. I came from Cairo. I had a North perspective and understanding of the conflict, which then when we discussed in Norway and with our partners, US and others, I think our relatively good relationship with the North and the government in Khartoum was absolutely necessary to achieve what we achieved in Kenya and the IGAD relation. If we had not have respect for the government in the North, then I think the Libyan Egyptian initiative, which also floated at that time, would have been preferred by the government.
Mr. Ambassador, do you expect, or did you expect, the separation of South Sudan at the end of the implementation of the CPA?
Yes.
Why?
When I say yes, after the death of John Garang, because it was
as a unity leader.
he was a unity leader. But personally, through my contacts and our contacts, Norwegian contacts, international contacts with SPLM, we knew that there were different views within the SPLM on
Correct.
this issue.
Unionist and separatist.
Yes, and the strongest unionist was Garang himself. He, you know, the first SPLM program, political program from 1984, doesn't mention South Sudan with one word.
Correct.
It was for a united
New Sudan.
New Sudan, a secular New Sudan. And I think if Garang, it's very difficult to say, but if Garang had lived, I think the attempt we had during this period to make unity attractive for the South would have been easier.
Do you think that CPA was really designed to favor separation of South Sudan?
Well, certainly there were two basic issues in the agreement in the Machakos that changed the whole game and made the CPA possible. There were two issues. One, that the South, after an interim period, should be allowed to have a referendum for independence, and the second was that they should have the right to maintain their own army during the interim period.
That's very crucial.
So right from the beginning it was quite clear that there was a probability that there would be independence during this period. I think that the conditions on the ground from the beginning gradually strengthened the desire in the South to be independent. For various reasons. One reason is also that the enormous wealth that was accumulated in the South through the oil well sharing agreement,
Oil revenue.
Actually they saw that they could even get even more through separation.
I will be getting back to that after we fully discuss the issue of peacemaking in Sudan. Knowing Abdulaziz Al-Hilo as a leader since early 2000, right now he is the head and the leader of the SPLM after Malik Agar and Yasser Arman. Do you think Abdulaziz as a leader is able to make peace in Sudan, the two areas in mainly?
Yes, I think he is able. He has done it once. He did it in 2001 with the Bergenstock agreement with the government, and that peace agreement worked until the CPA was signed, and you had the UNMISS operation coming in, which in my view did not function as well as actually the Joint Military Commission JMC operation, which then had been from 2002 to 2005. But yes, Abdulaziz is an open man in terms of he wants peace for his people. He wants peace, but there are conditions.
Without interruption, do you think that prospect for peace with Abdulaziz as a leader for the SPLM North is much better than Yasser Arman and Malik Agar before?
I think they have somewhat different agendas. The agenda of SPLM North with Yasser Arman and Malik Agar probably is more, as I can read it, more for a transformation of Sudan as such.
They have a national agenda.
They have a national agenda. Of course, with the
still adopting the theory of New Sudan.
Yes. So, which in a way is a continuation of John Garang's vision
Also, it falls in South Sudan, the original country for this idea.
Yes. So, but I think we knew when the CPA was signed
Yes.
that there were some who felt as losers in this. And I think the SPLM in the two areas, plus the issue of ABA, which is separate, but we had the protocol for the three areas, and the ABA issue is something I think is different.
It's quite different,
issue.
actually.
But the two areas, yes, I think they felt somewhat betrayed or forgotten by the international community and by the two parties, because the text on popular consultations and so on did not really provide what they wanted. And during the interim period up to 2011, you had a rotating governorship, and you had some actual balance between the two parties.
2 weeks ago, I mean, without interruption, 2 weeks ago, I mean, the negotiation session between SPLM North and the government of Sudan just ended with good intention to continue without getting involved back in conflict and war again. What is your perspective and the future perspective of making peace in the two areas mainly? And is that will be connected to Darfur issue as well? Do we have to have a comprehensive peace in the whole Sudan, linking two areas with Darfur, or two parallel track? And you said before that Abdulaziz has two conditions. So we need just to formulate like a perspective for the future setup for this conflict.
I think my experience from conflict resolutions is that you have to look at each element in a conflict.
Okay.
And in my view, the objective conditions in Darfur are different from the conditions and the situation in the two areas. Personally, I think that the situation in the two areas should be handled separately, but as part of a longer reconciliation process.
So the peace in two areas might be doable, possible, and should be getting a priority in this.
That is my view, yes. Of course, the President Mbeki's work and with the AU HIP is part of this.
Correct.
And is also the national dialogue that the President Bashir initiated and which concluded to some extent in October, it was 1.5 years ago, had elements that could provide solutions also for the two areas. But I think that finding a solution for the two areas probably will have two steps,
Okay.
or two phases.
But not two conditions.
No, not two conditions, but I see it in two phases.
Okay.
One will be to have a cessation of hostilities and a peace agreement for a certain period, during which the two parties, the government and the SPLM North, negotiate more in detail what should be the future situation, the future role, the future
Of the two areas.
of the two areas. And that again I see as probably a part of a broader reform of governance in Sudan, which I think also the President has had a vision of in the national dialogue, which is a much broader process. What kind of system of Sudan that would mean that is a long process, and it's not up to us to kind of judge what that
But
should
do you
be.
agree that for the two areas to have an autonomous status?
In some way, I think that was recognized already in the CPA, that there are some unique qualities with and historic qualities with the two areas.
And what is the second phase?
The second phase would be that you have a broader reform, as I said, of the governance in Sudan, probably with some more federal system, where you also can encompass the situation or the Darfur states and other states. It's a question of decentralization, and it's a situation of, or precondition would be you have trust at the local level to the national government.
Ambassador Fedorov, thank you very much for the first part of this discussion at
You're
our
welcome.
TV show. أعزائي المشاهدين، فاصل قصير ثم نعود، فابقوا معنا.